think in due deference to the chairman of the Connecticut Laborman Party, John Orman, gets the first question.
Thank you. I must remind everybody it's an anti-Lieberman party, so. I feel lucky, I've read the book, and I would like to ask you if you would talk a couple of minutes about Lou Dobbs' Howard Beale, and also talk about an interesting section you had on the McGovern fable. If you could talk a couple of minutes about those.
Sure. I spent some time, I got, not that the CNN higher-ups knew, but I was allowed to basically spend some time behind the scenes with Lou Dobbs and his show. And I tried to look at not necessarily is this guy right or wrong, but what is he exactly tapping into? And how is he tapping into it? And what I found is that his show is really uprising television, at least in the way it's structured. You'll notice, watch the show. I know a lot of people can't bear it. You know, a lot of people feel really strongly one way or the other about him. But you watch that show, and it's choreographed to tap into this feeling. You notice that each individual storyline has a title, a name that continues episode after episode after episode to tell you that this is an ongoing crusade. You know, broken borders, the war on the middle class. I forget the one about trade. It's,
Red Storm Rising.
Red Storm Rising, right? The war within, right? So it's telling you, we're on this crusade together. And you know, there was an interesting part about here's a guy who 5 years ago said CEOs are the greatest people on earth and they should be our heroes. I'm almost quoting word for word. And then 3 years after that said, you know, CEOs are the worst things in the world and they've ruined our country. So, and there's a whole question about, is his conversion a real conversion? I mean, I actually don't really care. It's, well, what is he doing now? And his answer, he's a smart guy. His answer is, well, you know, if I went into my editor, and he said it in that sort of this blustery Lou Dobbs way, if I went into my editor and I told him the way I'm going to get ratings is to talk about free trade and the war on the middle class and immigration, if I was a young cub reporter, they'd fire me. So he's got a pretty good answer as to whether his conversion from, basically corporate sycophant to Mr. Populist, he's got a smooth answer on that. But I don't think that's what's interesting about his show. What's interesting about his show is, what is he tapping into? How is he tapping into it? How can we use those same methods, those same strategies for our cause? And look, part of his cause, I think, is at least my cause. I mean, I don't agree with him at all on the immigration stuff, but I agree 100% with him on the trade stuff, and on the inequality stuff, and on the war on the middle class stuff. And in fact, I think that he actually represents what I'm talking about in terms of how this uprising is not really a partisan issue. This uprising crosses and splits apart all the different issues. The other good example of that is Mike Huckabee. Here is a person, okay, I mean, this is just amazing. Here is a person who campaigns and talks about CEOs are being paid too much, and inequality and free trade is unacceptable, who wins on, what was it, 9 or 10 Republican presidential primaries in 9 or 10 of the most conservative Republican states in the country. So that says to me that this is not a partisan uprising. And then the second...
George McGovern is the first vote I ever cast for president. Tell me about the McGovern fable.
Yeah, the McGovern fable it relates very directly to Ned's campaign. I think that what Ned faced in how the campaign was billed as controversial, and there was a lot of people who likened you to McGovernism, McGovernish politics. Well, what we have to look at is, what is that really saying? Because look, George McGovern is a great statesman, he's a great person. What that's really saying is what's happened, I think, since 1972 is there was, and it's really important with the superdelegates now as well. What happened was, and I probably don't have to recount all the history for folks who lived through it, is that basically a myth has been created that George McGovern was, after they opened up the nominating process, the convention nominating process, and made it more open, that the rabble, the people on the cover of the shadow on the cover of that book, nominated George McGovern, who was unelectable, and that George McGovern's loss because he was seen as an anti-war candidate, proves that if a Democrat runs as an anti-war candidate, they will be the next George McGovern. And by that meaning, they will be the next Democrat to lose in a landslide. And this myth has been created to the point where it's accepted fact. When Ned won his primary, I have it in the book and I have it in my column this week, there was a number of people who were saying, this means, horrible, horrifying, election-losing McGovernism is back. The Democrat, gloom and doom for the Democratic Party nationally, and it's a fable. And we are finally at a moment, thanks to George Bush, if there is a silver lining, George W. Bush has given us a chance to finally move past that McGovern fable. Because if you look at polling data, the public knows that the antithesis of McGovernism, or this cartoonish McGovernism, which is George Bushism, which is let's just invade everybody and be militaristic, not, be, this fake definition of strength. People now know that that's not making us safe. People now know that that is a disaster. So we really have an opportunity to change the entire national security debate to talk about how the entire military posture of the United States is weakening our country economically and on a national security basis, that the whole definition of strength right now is up for grabs. And if that changes, you have ripped the last leg of the conservative movement out from under it.